evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming back and being a part of this True Love Project 2016, night number 4. So we've got some cool things in store for you here this evening. Let's see. So if you could, before we get going, please remember to silence your cell phones for me. We'll try and keep the noise to a minimum, but we've been recording this, putting it out on the internet. I hope you've had a chance to check it out there, and or share the link with some other people who weren't able to come and be a part of this also. Our first love language we're going to be sharing tonight is on receiving gifts. And you can kind of see the decorations match that. We'd had some thoughts at one point. We were going to send you home with some empty boxes to inspire you to go buy a gift for your loved one, but I don't know if that quite came to fruition there. But so that's the thought of it. And I have a video I'd like to share to get us started, and then I'll introduce our guest speakers for the evening.
I call it husband things, but as I've gotten to know other husbands, that you can't call them husband things. I think I have to call them Nick things. When I worked at Herberger's, we had to be there sometimes 4:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it happened to be one of the day after Thanksgivings, and we had to be there, I think, at 3 a.m. And there was a ton of snow. It just was snowing all night long, and another manager had stayed the night. She lived in Whitefish, so she had stayed with us that night, and you know, we're getting ready, and I was like thinking to myself, I should have known better, but I'm like, you know, maybe I should have Nick drive me and Kathy to work, because I just am not. So I go into the bedroom, and he's not even there. And we're talking 3 a.m., you know, or 2:30, I don't even know what time it was. And I'm like kind of looking around the house, and Kathy was in the other bathroom, and I'm like, did you hear Nick? And she goes, yeah, I think I heard somebody go out the door. Well, at the time, we only had cars, and we hadn't been here very long, so we only had cars. We'd lived in the South, you know, there's not a lot of snow in the South. And so he goes up the hill to his parents' house, gets the Suburban, and brings the Suburban down, all warm, picks us up, and drives us into work. And, you know, here's all these other women, you know, they've all been shoveling their cars off, and you know, and we come in looking like, you know, we just stepped off whatever, you know, and nothing, you know, we look, you know, I remember my boss making a comment about this. And I remember saying to him, oh no, I mean, I didn't even have to ask. That's just, you know, who Nick is, how he is. And you could see by a lot of people's face that that's not what they were used to. And it was one of those moments where I sat back and said, I'm so lucky.
She would give me lavish gifts because she's an excellent gift giver. But it would upset me if she did that. And so one of her gifts to me is not to be giving me lavish gifts, right?
So how do you get around that then?
We used to have a thing where we didn't give Christmas gifts to each other, but somehow, so I was able to do, I incorporated stockings, so we could do gifts to each other in stockings. I mean, after 25 years, I'm starting to learn the things that really make him tick, that he won't get so upset about. So if I buy him clothes, I usually don't give them to him, I just put them in the closet. And then he just wears them, and then asks about them, and I'm like, oh yeah, you've had that. Because he, you know, but if I were to hand him an Alistair Begg book or something like that, he might get a little irritated, but he couldn't wait to dive into it. So, you know, but that is who I am. I love to, you know, the gifts are all wrapped with like handmade ribbons and for the kids at Christmas, and I'm very intentional about birthday gifts and wedding gifts, and yeah.
Welcoming our next guest speakers, Nick and Jackie Emmesinger. I'm tickled to have them come and share this evening tonight's love language on receiving gifts. And man, boy, if you it was that story that Jackie shared about Nick. If your love language in particular is acts of service, and you want to turn it into a gift, going above and beyond the call of duty like Nick did that night really makes something rise to such a level that it's just received as that precious gift. And I really thought that was a cool thing, especially with Nick necessarily claiming that he is not necessarily a gift giver. He has found a way in his own love language to do some really cool things like that. So I'm just tickled to have you guys come and share more, and hope we can all, I know we'll learn a little bit more about what it takes to be with a spouse who has this as their particular love language.
So one of the things that I just wanted to kind of, I guess, put out there, it occurred to me as I was watching some of the other couples come up here and just share a little bit about their experience and talk about the chapters and the love languages, that some people might believe that the reason couples are up here is because we've got it all figured out. That may be true for the other couples. Me and Jackie don't have it all figured out, so I just want to put that out there. I mean, we really all struggle with this stuff. I mean, I don't think it comes naturally, and so I just really want to kind of underscore that. There may be people that have everything figured out. I frankly don't believe that's true. We're all learning, and one of the challenges, for me personally, when Rob approached me and said, "Hey," he found out that Jackie, one of her love languages was receiving and giving gifts. And he's like, well, gosh, that's perfect. You guys can do this. And I'm like, no, because I still don't understand it, I mean, it may be the gift, but I really still struggle with it. And so, I had some anxiety about this before even coming up here, because it's really not my wheelhouse. But I think that is the issue, right? I mean, getting past our own language, whatever it is, and trying to learn what our spouse's language is, and then meet them where they're at. That's really what this book is all about, And so it's okay if you don't feel like you have this stuff figured out. You probably never will. The hope is that we get better as we go on this journey together as husband and wife. And so I just want to throw that out there for whatever it's worth. To keep the bar low, maybe, So when, if I don't let you talk, go ahead and holler,
Oh, I will.
Yeah, okay. So when I first read this chapter on giving and receiving gifts, I was really drawn into the story. They had this example of this guy that really was good to his wife. Or, it looked like he was really good to his wife from my perspective, right? This is a wife who stayed home. She didn't have to work. She took care of the kids. She had a nice house. She had a nice car. She didn't really have to worry about that much. From my perspective, I thought, man, that is pretty cool. I mean, this guy is really providing for his wife and giving her really everything she needs. Why would she not be happy with that? And then, it goes on to talk about how he learned that his wife had the same gift that my wife has. And that is, she likes to receive gifts. They don't have to be huge gifts. And she also likes to give gifts. But when he plugged into that, and, he had a really, I guess, a profound experience when he went to one of these conferences, and he learned that, look, this is what it means to have this gift. And so he was really intentional about, trying to fill a need that he knew that he wasn't feeling before. And just little stuff, like bringing her a cookie that was her favorite cookie, flowers, bringing a pizza home so she didn't have to cook, little stuff like that that he didn't usually do. And how energized she was as a result of just this little change. And in a fairly short period of time, the course of their marriage was dramatically changed. It's a wonderful story. But even after reading that story, I'm still like, but she had the house and the car, and she didn't have to work, And so that's a man looking through his, man filter, right? Versus some women, not all, but certainly women with this gift, looking through another filter, entirely different, right? Not wrong, just different. Just different.
So, sometimes having this gift, I remember knowing that it was a part of who I was, but feeling like I wish I had a different gift. As we read the chapter, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, she did. She had all these great things, as did I. Nick provides for me. All of those things, very similar, but at the same time, it was like there was still things that I wished that he would do, or that, just little things. And so you kind of, you kind of get this feeling that you're being greedy, like, you know, okay, do I really need that? I mean, you know, what's a cookie? I mean, well, cookie's kind of a big deal, I guess. You know, I guess it depends on when that is, but, you know, so when I'm reading the chapter, I'm even in that moment, I'm feeling kind of guilty. So Nick and I are talking about, you know, this and this being part of who I am, and it led us down this kind of road of discovery. I mean, we knew kind of where we had been and where we have come from and where we are now, but when you start to really dive in and really look at it, it really shows you how your past shapes who you are also when you come into the relationship. And Nick will talk a little bit about his, and then I'll talk a little bit about my upbringing.
And so, you know, why did we get to this place? You know, when I was sort of thinking about this guy, I wondered, how did this guy grow up, you know? Did he grow up in this house where his father was a provider, and this is what it meant to be a man, and this is what it meant to treat your wife, and he thought he was doing everything he was supposed to do? He didn't really have this whole love language thing as part of his vocabulary, clearly, right? And so it just made me think a little bit, like Jackie said, about how we're shaped by our upbringing and our experiences. And my upbringing was different than Jackie's in a couple of respects. But one of the ways it was really different is we didn't celebrate or emphasize like birthdays and gift giving and stuff like that. Like I would get, you know, maybe for my birthday, a set of tires or something like that that I needed. You know, it was all practical stuff. And so, and even Christmas, the gifts were just not a big deal in my family. And it's not that I grew up in an unloving family. It's just that that kind of stuff wasn't really emphasized. We were more practical. And so, you know, you carry that with you into your relationships. And I just figured everybody was like that. And then, of course, I learned in the course of our marriage that everybody wasn't like that. But I figured that, you know, she'd come around eventually, right? But that, you know, and of course, Jackie's experience shaped her in a different way. So.
Yeah, so so we get together and kind of go through the honeymoon phase, and there were some flowers and things like that in the beginning, and we had one Christmas without kids. Yeah, we got started early. But anyway, so I was used to, you know, birthdays and Christmas and anniversaries and things like that were a really big deal. And so it was, you know, I remember my dad shopping for my mom shopping for my dad. My dad to this day still is always on the hunt for the things that my mom loves. Music boxes, the houses now that light up. So that was like always in the back of my mind is that's how I grew up watching my dad. So to me, that was kind of a normal thing. That's what husbands did. But they don't all do that. So so we get married, and it's Christmas is for the kids. And Nick has always said that, his parents always say that, and I absolutely believe that. Christmas is for the kids. Our kids believed in Santa until they were very, very old, and I think that is totally fine. But so we started to adapt that philosophy, because as a mom who wants to be over there going, well, what about my present? I mean, you know, it's kind of like, okay, are you a child too? Well, sort of, I guess. I don't know. So little by little, it was kind of changing who I was, you know, and I was like, okay, well, this probably is a good thing. I should, you know, be more of an adult. This is what, you know, we do. I need to sacrifice for the kids. I don't really need presents. But inside, I was kind of like, so that this is really how it's going to be. So, of course, on the outside, I made it look like it was okay, but on the inside, I was thinking, you know, I don't understand why, you know, we can't do something, even if it's small or little, or, but it still was like a wrestle within myself, personally, because it was kind of, I felt bad that that was something that energized me, but it really did. So, as we said in the video, I incorporated stocking, so that was awesome. So I was able to, you know, give Nick a gift through the stocking, and he could give me a gift through the stocking, because it was really Santa, because our kids still thought it was Santa, so it worked out really good that, you know, we weren't giving each other gifts.
And even now that people know that there is no Santa, we still have the stockings. That's still a tradition.
Santa still comes to our house.
Yeah.
He always will. So that was really a change for us, and we've definitely grown through that process. But reading back through that chapter, it really brought, you continue to evolve, I guess you can say. So we learned a bunch more other things too.
And one of the things that we sort of, in terms of kind of coming to grips, kind of naturally, before reading the book, the clue phone is ringing, eventually we're a little slow, but we kind of pick it up, right? Maybe I don't answer it completely, but, and so, vacations were a big deal to Jackie, and that's another sort of an area where it can be a gift, right? I didn't really like big vacations and stuff like that, but Jackie did. And I really resisted in the beginning, before we went on any vacations. But then when we went as a family, it was always a family vacation, right? It was just amazing that when you get away from everything just with your family. You guys know what that's like, whether you're camping or whether you're just going to Missoula or whatever, just getting away with your family can be a really kind of an energizing experience. And the kids just loved it. Jackie loved it, was way energized by it. And I think she liked maybe planning the vacation even better than the vacation itself.
Yes, guilty.
She's a big planner. And so we incorporated that. And so there were sacrifices that were made over the course of time, right? Where she was starting to get some of that stuff that she needed. But I was still missing some of the little things, right? Like the cookie. We laughed about the cookie, and after we read that chapter, I'm like, I wouldn't even think to bring a cookie home. But if I were to bring a cookie home, what kind of a cookie would I even bring home? We've been married almost 25 years. We just had this conversation not that long ago. And so we both guess what the other person's favorite cookie is. Both of us got it wrong. We had no idea what the other person's favorite cookie was. And the funny thing about it is that our favorite cookie is the same cookie, and we never knew that. And so, I guess I raise that because I think it's a pretty good example of how you can go on in a relationship for a really long time and not be intentional about really learning, about each other and how we can really touch each other, right? And so I think that you do have to be intentional about it. And the truth is, and I think it's kind of a sad truth, and it's a truth that I think if we're really honest with ourselves, we have to say that most of us, at least to a certain extent, are living this truth. We can go on being modestly content, really, not meeting the other's needs. We can do that. We've all done that, at different periods. But why would you want to? Why should you do that? Don't you want something more?
Yeah, we were talking about this just a couple days ago, and it's funny how you can read a book or you can go to a seminar and you can get totally energized by that moment, and then, oh yeah, we're gonna do that, and you want to commit to all these things in the moment, and then life happens and the things in the moment don't really happen anymore. And I think with this particular gift, if it happens to be your spouse's gift, it's one that has to be a little bit more deliberate. And Nick's like, so could you like, if I haven't done something in like a week or something, could you remind me or tell me? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to ask you to buy me a gift. But we talked about,
we're still negotiating that. But.
Yeah, we talked about, just kind of like a checkup, so how are things going? The other morning, I'm really not a morning person. Obviously, work, you get up, you do what you have to do, but if it was my choice, the day would probably start closer to 9:30 or 10. But Nick is an absolute morning person, so we're all doing this health thing because of, well, my son mostly, but just because it's a good thing to do. So it's now, scrambled eggs or egg whites or whatever in the morning, and Nick obviously is the one that has more time to get up and do that. I'm not getting up and cooking scrambled eggs in the morning. So he brings them into me. This is, so it's a gift. It really is a gift to me. So he brings it into me, and I didn't have to work that day. So I come back out with it and sit down, and we're sitting there in the kitchen, and he's just kind of looking at me, and I'm thinking, okay, so I can go back and do the usual routine, but I'm not going to work, you know? But he was just floored that we were just gonna sit there, and because, you know, we had the time. And so gifts are different on all different levels. I mean, a gift to him is time and you know, just being there in the moment. And a gift for me can be that as well, or it can be vacations, or, you know, letting me sleep in. That was a big thing in the beginning of our marriage. I mean, a gift isn't necessarily something that you have to unwrap. It's just realizing, you know, what energizes that person. And even if it's something that, you know, you're not completely on board with, you know, you come to understand that you get energized by them. I think that's, you know, Nick has gotten energized by some of the things that we've done that have to do with gift giving, and that is not, like he said, in his wheelhouse at all. So it's when you kind of, you know, give to your spouse in that way, it's going to come back like threefold to you if you can get to that place. And we're definitely still getting to that place. I mean, we're not, you know, Nick isn't running home with now the cookie we know we both love every day. So, and that doesn't fit the fitness concept. So, probably what we don't know about a cookie is who knows. But anyway.
Well, and so, you know, there's on that whole question of why, right? I mean, why change? We get good at being sort of silently resentful, you know, towards one another. And that's something that we really don't want to be good at, you know, at the end of the day. And so, and I think that sometimes we go down that road, we don't even really realize we're going down that road. You know, somebody's done something that offends me, and so, you know, I'll be passive about it, and instead of, you know, really dealing with it in a healthy way, I'll just kind of withhold affection or, you know, whatever. I mean, I think that that's kind of, you know, a fallback. But what we're called to do, you know, Jackie brought up the whole thing with breakfast, and that's kind of cute, and, you know, not to belittle it, because it was cool, especially when Jackie came and we had some time together. That was really cool. But the backstory on that is when I got married, I thought that's what couples did. You know, they got up early, the husband and wife sat there, they had breakfast together, and, you know, ideally...
It was a very big letdown for him. He was so fat about that.
Yeah, there's going to be, you know, eggs and bacon probably, and some toast, and, you know. And so, and I'm a morning person, so I mean, I get up early in the morning. That was so not the case. Jackie's not a morning person, right? And so she wants to get every little ounce of sleep she possibly can, and then get up and get ready in 15 minutes and out the door.
That's why sometimes he's bringing the eggs to me in other places than the kitchen.
Or she's combing her hair.
Yeah, getting ready.
But the thing about it was, that was an issue that was a source of a lot of resentment for me. You know, I felt like there was something, an expectation I had that wasn't getting met. And so it was a bone of contention, especially in the beginning of our marriage. And so she had a lot of guilt, you know, if she wanted to sleep in. And so she, even when she was sleeping in, wasn't getting a real restful sleep, right? If you know what I mean. Because I'm pacing in the kitchen, you know, looking at my watch, waiting for my wife to come. And so it wasn't, and I'm not here to give my testimony, but it wasn't until later in life that I became a Christian, okay? And it profoundly changed how I viewed my wife and how I viewed what service really meant. And at the end of the day, for those of us that call on the name of Jesus, we do this for a different reason, right? It's not so that I can get affection back from my wife. It's not so I can look good in front of other couples. It's because we were called to that standard by Him. You know, we're called to love our wives like Christ loved the church. That kind of self-sacrificial love is what we're called to as men. Not so that she'll be nice to us. And not only if she's nice to us. But we do that because we genuinely love Christ and we want to honor Him in everything that we do. And because He created both men and women, that energizes her when she sees that genuine, selfless, you know, sacrificial love being expressed on a daily basis. And so that's ultimately what we're called to do, and it really does work. So, you know, here's to doing this together, by the way. We haven't figured it out yet, but
yeah,
we're on our way. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Big Jackie, thank you so much. That was that inspired me. As a matter of fact, so we're going to change up just a little bit the questions that you have on your sheet. I'm going to ask you to start out with this question. You need to find out tonight, what is your spouse's favorite cookie? All right? And not only that, here's a love dare for you. This should be an easy, this is not much of a dare. You know, giving gifts, receiving gifts it's a hugely powerful thing. If somebody has that love language, as Jackie was mentioning there, you know, doing that's like 3 times more powerful for them to receive something for someone that may not, you know, be on that level. Can you remember to bring your spouse a cookie this week? So that's the challenge. Find out what the cookie is and find a time to get the cookie to your spouse this week. If you need any help, I can tell you that, what's that place that gives free cookies on Friday? So if you're running out of time between now and next week, you go to Subway, you get a free cookie. All right, you're halfway there, all right? And I want to hear I want to hear some stories back next week about how well you were able to pull this off, okay? So we're going to take 10 minutes at this point in time and go over the few questions that we have, and then we'll jump into the next chapter. Well, we're going to jump into this next chapter here. And unfortunately, guys, our next guest speakers are sick tonight. So Holly and Corey Odell are not able to share the physical touch deal. And so I'm going to jump ahead to chapter 9, and we'll pray for their swift recovery and get them back here next week to share that last love language, number 5 on physical touch. So if you didn't read that, you got an extra week to get it read and get it covered. So now, unfortunately, I'm stuck going to be covering a chapter that you have not had a chance to read, but it's something that I imagine if you haven't already peeked through to the rest of the book, we're going to spend some time now talking about how to discover your primary love language. And in chapter 9, Gary Chapman, he's providing some insight in discovering your primary love language here, and he shares one of the first stories that he opens up with is about this person named Marcus, and how appropriate to me it was to read this scenario, because it really felt like what Marcus was sharing was my story. In fact, you know, I was reading this chapter and I'm realizing that I would have told you at the start of the book that my primary love language, like Marcus, was physical touch, I would have said. But come to find out, it played out a little bit differently. So in this scenario, Gary's talking to Marcus, and you know, he's asking him about his love language, and Marcus is saying, I think like most men might very well say that physical touch is one of my top love languages. And then you know, Gary's asking him, well, what's your other love language? And Marcus goes on to start sharing how words of affirmation, you know, mean so much to him. In fact, he is just going on about you know, some particular examples of that, of how his wife has just shared you know, things to him that really inspired him. And I think it really, you know, started, you know, spinning the wheels in Gary's mind, thinking through this scenario that maybe Marcus doesn't have this all figured out necessarily, because you know, I think for men we have some physiological differences that we share that are different than women. Now, at this point in time, I got to tell you that my wife told me as I practiced this talk before, she said, Rob, do not get crude up there. All right, do not get crude. And she gave me a whole list of things that I could not try and use as terms to explain this point that men are physiologically different than women. And therefore, over a certain period of time, men have a stronger sex drive that women do not seem to have. They're not physically drawn to that. So I hope you can grasp what I'm trying to say here without saying it, even though you can go to chapter 9 and read all about the words I'm not supposed to tell you about up here. But you can find that Gary's using them quite freely there in that chapter. So, you know, women have a different sex drive than men do, okay? You know, it's emotional, it's all about emotions and connecting and whatnot. That men are more physically inclined, and so we have a tendency, though, to get this all messed up. Because we're thinking that our primary love language is physical touch, but the question I would ask you is, when you are done being intimate, is there more snuggling, or do you just roll over? If you're just rolling over, you might want to relook this, okay? So this chapter goes into looking at some of this stuff here, right? And you know, if you're a snuggler, then hey, maybe there is something to physical touch in your life, and there's so much more to what physical touch is all about. And I don't want to steal Holly and Corey's thunder as they're going to share it next week, and so fortunate that I got to jump ahead of them here a little bit here. But Gary asks Marcus, he says, because he's trying to help Marcus to wrestle through this, and he asks him, he says, now Marcus, he says, if you were getting sexually satisfied with Alicia on a regular basis, but Alicia changed her words of affirmation to become negative and critical of you, would you still feel love to her? And his answer was no. No, I wouldn't. And Gary suggests that there are 3 ways to discover your own primary love language. And so he says, so here's the first way. He says, what does your spouse do or fail to do that hurts you most deeply? The opposite of what hurts you most is probably your love language. Second part of that is, what have you most often requested of your spouse? The thing you have most often requested is likely the thing that would make you feel most loved. And the third question to ask is, in what way do you regularly express love to your spouse? Your method of expressing love may be an indication of how you in fact receive love. And I'll tell you that it's been fascinating to me as I've been interviewing all the different folks in this True Love Project, and how often I've come across people that they fell in love with the person they are with today because that person communicated love to them in a way that was not communicated to them by their parents. So that was interesting, and maybe you're feeling the same way. One of the men I had spoken with shared that his parents told him he could do nothing right, fell in love with the woman who told him how awesome he was, or the woman whose parents never showed her any physical emotion, fell for the man whose arms wrapped around her and just made her feel cherished. Or the man who always got hugs from his parents, but had to do everything else around the house for himself, found love from the woman who was always doing the little things for him, the little things that count. It would seem that our past has a lot to do with how often or how our love languages get created. Our past has a lot to do with how our love languages get created. So are you ready to dig in and discover what your love language is? We're going to take some time and do that right now. Who's got smartphones in the room? If you haven't already done it, take a minute right now, and it's a free app. And you can go and download the app 5Love, okay? If you just type in your Google app 5Love, and you will come up to a page. This is actually the web page off of the internet, but it looks very similar on your phone there, and it's got a cute little, once you download it, it's got a little icon that shows up with a 5 and a heart. So then you got the, they don't have it up there on that screen. You want to hold it? Yeah, so you can see, and then that's what it looks like in the end is what Tom has here. So if you got that, I want you to take some time right now and pull up and do a profile check, okay? So there's going to ask you about 30 questions. Now, if you don't have a phone, a smartphone with you right now, you can do that. All right, turn in your books. I got a few extra books up here too that you can make use of. And let's look at right towards the back of it. You're going to find in your book the 5 love languages profile for couples, and there's one section for him, and there's another section that says for her. And you simply take a little bit of time and go over answering those questions. Those are like 30 questions, and you're going to answer them A, B, C, D, or E. So highlight how many, put a tick by how many A's you mark and how many E's you mark, and then in the end, you're going to get a profile. Now, I'll tell you, as you start looking at those questions, okay, you know, not all of them are going to make, you know, you might look at that and say, oh man, I could answer yes to both of those. Or you're going to look at it and say, neither one of these express who it is I am. Well, I'm sorry, tough. You're going to have to do the best you can to pick one. In the end, you're going to find that there's one of those languages, I think in particular, is going to rise above the rest, and that's going to be your primary love language that you have. And as we've been learning and hearing, you know, I do think that there is, we do seem to have one very specific primary love language, I think, that stays with us, that we express always. It's like just a part of us. The others, they do seem to fluctuate and vary. As we were hearing last week in particular, is you know, your love tank gets empty in one area. You know, maybe it's gift giving, you know, and then receiving that kind of fills it up, or whatever the case might be. The others do seem to vary in our relationship, and I wonder if any of them are ever just totally at zero. You would know, you know, each person is different and unique, but I think there's certain points in time where every love language kind of rise up to the point where it needs some attention, you know. Who needs anyone need a book, an extra book to read in the back and go through the survey? And we're gonna take some time right now. I got a few more books I can pass out here. And so when you complete it, you know, there's even an opportunity there to email it to your spouse, okay, when you finish it. If you only got one phone, go through it real quick, hand your phone over to your spouse and let them go through it. You can email back and forth, but don't share it with them just yet, because I think that's one of the questions that we're going to go over here in a moment, is seeing if you can guess. So once you're done with that, okay, turn to your spouse and see if you can guess what their top 3 love languages are, and then have them do that to you, okay? All right, we're going to take some time and dig into that. What we're going to do, we'll send you out the door with that this evening. And if you haven't figured it out there's no quiz from us, you know, just a quiz between you and your spouse, you know, so do that. Maybe we don't want to be around when you do that, I'm not sure. But if you're really good at it, that could be a great thing. And it is a great thing once you. So I would encourage you, definitely share, you know, each other's love languages. That's how we're going to get better at this whole game, is trying to you know, work on speaking our spouse's love language and just drawing closer to them through that. So we're going to wrap it up at this point in time, and we'll send you out the door and have you complete that, and then share that with each other this evening here, if you would. So I'd like to close us in prayer at this point in time, and definitely please come on back next week. We got just 2 evenings left. We have physical touch we're going to cover next week. And then, let's see here, chapter 10. Can somebody look at what chapter 10 is for me? I think that's Mark and Terry speaking on chapter 10. Is that right? Your love is a choice. Yeah, so we'll do physical touch and love is a choice. So chapters, which you probably already read, chapter 8. Read chapter 9. There's some good stuff in chapter 9. and then pick up and read chapter 10 for next week. So let's close in prayer here. Heavenly Father, Lord, we're just blessed to be here. Lord, we just thank you for even having an opportunity to do something like this. Lord, it's a great honor that we have to even live in this nation and have all of the blessings that we have. We just appreciate it so much that we have an opportunity to just not be worrying about basic essential living, but to be able to just do something cool like this. Lord, I just ask for your blessings and protections upon all of those who are, we've got many that are traveling tonight and couldn't be here. We've got many that are sick. Lord, that you would just give them a healing touch. And I just pray that you would be with us throughout the week, keeping us healthy and safe until we come together again next week. We pray for your protection. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.